If I had known pretending to be someone's fiancé would mean Mrs. Henderson from across the hall would start calling me future son-in-law, I would have stayed in my crappy studio apartment with the moldy ceiling and broken heater. But then again, if I hadn't agreed, I wouldn't be standing here shoulder to shoulder with him, heart tripping over itself every time he breathes too close. I swear, the universe has the sickest sense of humor. The first time I met Ethan Walker, he wasn't smiling. Actually, he looked like he wanted to murder the rental agent. I was there by accident, hoping to snag a room, clutching my pathetic bank statements and trying not to look like a stray dog who wandered in. He was tall, sharp-edged, the kind of man who looked like life had taught him to build walls instead of bridges. He had this leather jacket thrown over his shoulder and an expression that said, "Don't waste my time." And I was already wasting mine. The problem was simple. Neither of us could afford the rent on that apartment alone. The landlord, a stern woman in her 50s, made it clear. Couples get priority. We want stability. A joint lease means less risk for us. That's when Ethan's eyes cut to Medark, assessing, almost amused. "You and me," he said, voice low and reckless. "We'll say we're together." I almost laughed in his face. Almost. Because who does that? Who looks at a stranger with coffee stains on his shirt and decides to fake an entire relationship just to get a lease? Apparently, Ethan Walker does. And the worst part? I said yes. The apartment wasn't spectacular. Beige walls, thin carpet, a kitchen that smelled faintly of someone else's garlic. But to me, it was heaven compared to the dump I'd been living in. Ethan seemed less impressed, pacing the living room like he owned it already, hands in his pockets, gaze sharp. When the landlord returned with paperwork, Ethan slid his arm casually around my shoulders. My body went rigid, heart screaming in panic, but my mouth traitorous thing stayed shut. "Yes," he told her smoothly. "This place is perfect for us. We'll take it." That word clanged around my head like a church bell. The landlord studied us, skeptical. "How long have you two been together?" Ethan didn't miss a beat. 2 years. My mouth opened. His fingers pressed gently, firmly into my shoulder blade, a silent warning. I forced a smile. "Yes, 2 years. Since college." College. I hadn't even gone to college. But Ethan's lips twitched like he found my lie charming instead of pathetic. We signed the lease. And just like that, my life got complicated. Living with Ethan was something. He wasn't a bad roommate. He was worse. He was neat, almost obsessively. His shoes always lined up by the door. His books stacked perfectly on the shelf. His coffee mug always washed, dried, and put away. Meanwhile, I was chaos wrapped in human skin. Socks everywhere. Half-written songs scribbled on napkins. Leftovers I swore I'd finish but never did. And yet, he didn't kick me out. Instead, he'd cite his long, patient, put-upon sigh and pick up after me, muttering under his breath about how I was going to drive him insane. But there were moments, like the night I came home late from my dead-end job at the diner, exhausted and smelling like fries. I found him asleep on the couch, glasses slipping down his nose, a book open on his chest. The sight made something in my chest ache, sharp and unfamiliar. Or the morning he cooked breakfast actual pancakes. Not the sad cereal I usually ate, and slid a plate toward me without meeting my eyes. "You need real food," he muttered. It wasn't kindness. Not really. But it wasn't nothing either. The neighbors, however, made everything worse. Mrs. Henderson, our 80-year-old neighbor across the hall, was the worst culprit. Sweet, nosy, relentless. She caught us together one morning when Ethan was heading out for work, tie crooked, and half asleep was stumbling after him with his forgotten wallet. "Oh, aren't you too adorable?" she gushed, eyes sparkling. "Running after your fiancé like that. Young love is just so precious." Ethan froze. I froze. Fiancé. I was about to correct her. But Ethan, cool as ever, just slipped his wallet into his pocket and smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson," he said smoothly. "We're very happy." Happy. My brain short-circuited. And from then on, the neighborhood decided we were engaged. First, it was funny. A joke we whispered about when no one else could hear. Your fiancé left his socks on the couch again, Ethan would tease dryly. Or I'd roll my eyes and say, your future husband wants to know why you hoard coffee like the apocalypse is coming. But the longer it went on, the less it felt like a joke. Because sometimes his hand lingered a little too long on my shoulder when we were performing for the neighbors. Sometimes I caught him looking at me like I was more than just a roommate, more than a partner in this stupid charade. And sometimes, God help me, looked back. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just pretending anymore. Ethan's past was a locked box, and he wasn't handing me the key. I caught glimpses, though. The way he tensed when someone mentioned family. The way he drank too much whiskey on quiet nights and stared out the window like he was waiting for a ghost. One night, curiosity got the better of me. Why do you need this apartment so badly? I asked. He didn't answer at first. Just swirled the whiskey in his glass. Everyone needs somewhere to start over, he said finally. I wanted to ask more, but the look on his face haunted. Fragile made me bite my tongue. It all could have stayed pretend. It should have. But then, at the neighborhood barbecue, things exploded. We'd gone because Mrs. Henderson practically dragged us there, insisting the lovebirds couldn't hide forever. The backyard was full of neighbors' kids running around. Adults gossiping over potato salad. Someone clinked a glass. To Ethan and his fiancée. Everyone cheered. My face burned. And then before I could stop him, Ethan slipped his hand into mine. Warm, firm, steady, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And my stupid heart believed him. The way Ethan's hand fit into mine felt wrong. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just another layer to the lie, another part of the performance we'd both signed up for. But my chest betrayed me, twisting painfully like my heart couldn't tell the difference between real and pretend. The cheers around us blurred, voices fading into white noise. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. I just stared at him, at Ethan, who looked back with that same practiced calm, as if nothing about this moment was extraordinary. But it was. To me, it was. After the barbecue, we walked back to our apartment in silence. Our joined hands had long since separated, but my skin still remembered the warmth. I kept waiting for him to make some sarcastic comment, to laugh about how gullible everyone was. But he didn't. Instead, he unlocked the door, stepped inside, and tossed his keys on the counter. His expression was unreadable, his jaw tight. I finally broke the silence. You didn't have to do that back there. His back was to me. Do what? I swallowed hard. Hold my hand like that. Let them toast to us. He turned then, eyes sharp, voice calm but laced with something I couldn't name. Would you rather I corrected them? Told them you're just my fake fiancé? Embarrassed you in front of everyone? I flinched. That's not what I meant. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like he was tired of the conversation already. Then what did you mean? I opened my mouth but no words came out. Because how was I supposed to explain that I couldn't stop thinking about it? That every accidental brush of his hand, every shared glance, every fake smile we'd put on for the world felt too real for me to handle? He didn't wait for my answer. Forget it, he muttered, disappearing into his room and shutting the door. But I didn't forget. Couldn't. The next few weeks were torture. Every time we were in the same room, my brain betrayed me, replaying that moment over and over. His hand in mine, the way the world had cheered, the way, just for a second, I almost believed. But reality was cruel. We weren't together. He didn't look at me the way I looked at him. Or did he? Because sometimes, when he thought I wasn't paying attention, I caught him staring. His eyes would linger too long, his expression unreadable. But the moment I noticed, he'd look away. It drove me insane. One rainy Thursday night, I found him on the balcony, smoking. He rarely smoked, only when something weighed heavy on him. His leather jacket hung off his shoulders, damp from the drizzle. Thought you quit? I said softly, stepping out beside him. He didn't look at me. I did. The city lights blurred through the rain, casting shadows across his face. He looked tired. Not physically. Ethan was always composed, but in that way people look when they're carrying too much. I hesitated before asking, do you ever regret this? Us pretending? Finally, he turned his head, eyes dark and unreadable. Every day. The words hit me like a punch. My chest hollowed, leaving nothing but ache. I forced a laugh, bitter and shaky. Well, thanks for being honest. But then said it. Quiet, almost too quiet to hear over the rain. Not for the reason you think. I froze. Then why? He didn't answer right away. Just took another drag, exhaled smoke into the night air, and muttered. Because sometimes I forget it's not real. My heart stopped. I wanted to ask what he meant, to press, to demand clarity. But the fear of shattering whatever fragile truth lingered between us kept me silent. So I just stood there, shivering in the rain, while the echo of his words sank deeper into me. The breaking point came when my brother showed up. Ryan had always been the golden child, successful job, perfect relationship, the kind of son parents brag about. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment, the one who couldn't hold down a decent job or keep his life in order. When I opened the door and saw him standing there in his expensive suit, his judgment already radiating from his smile, my stomach dropped. Little brother, he said smoothly, stepping inside like he owned the place. His gaze swept over the apartment, lingering on the photos Mrs. Henderson had insisted on taking of Ethan and me for the neighborhood newsletter. So this is where you live now? I bristled. What do you want, Ryan? He smirked. Can't a brother visit? Besides, I heard you're engaged. Thought I should meet the lucky guy. My heart stopped. He knew. Ethan appeared from the kitchen then, calm as ever. You must be Ryan, he said, extending a hand. I'm Ethan. Ryan shook it, his smile widening, sharp and cruel. Ah, the fiancé. Pleasure to finally meet you. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Dinner was a nightmare. Ryan grilled Ethan with questions, his tone polite but edged with disdain. So, Ethan, what do you do? How do you plan to support my little brother? Marriage is a big responsibility, after all. I wanted to strangle him. Ethan, though, didn't flinch. I'm an architect, he said smoothly. I manage fine. Ryan raised a brow. Architect, huh? Sounds demanding. Must be hard to balance that with a relationship. Ethan's gaze flicked to me, just for a second. Then he smiled faintly. Not as hard as you'd think. Some things are worth the effort. My chest tightened. Ryan didn't notice the way my breath hitched, but he did notice how flustered I was, and he smirked. Well, as long as you know what you're getting into. My brother isn't exactly easy. I snapped. Enough, Ryan. His eyes widened at my tone, but I didn't care. For once, I wasn't going to let him belittle me. Ethan reached under the table, his hand brushing mine steady, grounding. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just pretending anymore, either. Later, after Ryan finally left, I collapsed on the couch, exhausted. I'm sorry, I muttered. He's always been like that. Ethan sat beside me, quiet. Then, softly, he said, You don't have to apologize for him. You're not responsible for the way he treats you. I looked at him, startled. Why do you care? His gaze met mine, steady, unflinching. Because you deserve better. The words stole the air from my lungs. Before I could stop myself, I whispered, Do you mean that? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Silence stretched between us, thick with things unsaid. His hand was still close to mine, close enough that if I moved just a little, our fingers would touch. I almost did it, almost bridged the gap, but fear held me back. So instead, I leaned back, closing my eyes, pretending my heart wasn't breaking. The next morning, everything felt different. Not in the obvious way. Ethan still moved around the apartment with his usual precision, coffee in hand, hair perfectly in place. But there was a tension in the air, a charged silence that made my chest ache. I wanted to talk about last night, about what he'd said, about what I felt. But I didn't, because what if I was wrong? What if it was all in my head? What if he didn't mean it the way I wanted him to? So I said nothing, and the silence between us grew louder. One evening, Mrs. Henderson invited us over for tea. Ethan tried to decline, but she was relentless, and I didn't have the heart to say no. Her apartment was cozy, filled with doilies and family photos. She fussed over us like we really were her grandsons-in-law. "You two remind me of my Harold and me," she said, eyes twinkling. "We were inseparable from the start. I can tell you boys are the same." Ethan smiled politely. I forced a laugh, but inside, I was screaming. Because wasn't that the cruelest part? We weren't inseparable. We weren't real. And yet, when Ethan helped Mrs. Henderson carry a heavy box to her closet, when I watched the way his strong hands steadied her fragile frame, I couldn't help but think maybe he could be real. Maybe we could be. But did he want that? That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Finally, I got up, padding softly into the living room. Ethan was there, sitting in the dark, staring out the window. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked quietly, not turning. "No," I admitted, sinking onto the couch beside him. For a while, we just sat there, the silence comfortable for once. The city lights flickered outside, casting a glow across his face. Then, softly, he said, "You scare me." My breath caught. "What?" He finally looked at me, eyes raw and unguarded. "You make me feel things I'm not supposed to feel. Things I thought I buried a long time ago." My heart pounded. "Ethan, I don't know how to do this," he confessed, voice rough. "I don't know how to let someone in. But with you, feels different. And I don't know if that's good or bad." The world tilted beneath me. This was it. The truth I'd been desperate for. I reached out, hesitating only for a second before my hand found his. "Maybe you don't have to know yet. Maybe we can just figure it out together." His fingers tightened around mine, and for the first time I let myself believe. The morning after Ethan held my hand in the dark, something in our apartment shifted. The air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew our secret now. We moved around each other differently, hesitant, careful, like every touch and glance carried too much meaning. I burned the toast. He didn't tease me like usual. Instead, he took the pan from my hands gently, as if he was afraid I'd shatter. And that terrified me more than any fight could have. Because what if this fragile thing between us wasn't built to last? At first, it was little moments. When Ethan left for work, he lingered at the door. "Don't forget to eat lunch," he said, like he always did. But his voice was softer now, almost tender. When I fell asleep on the couch, he didn't wake me. Instead, I found a blanket draped over me when I opened my eyes, his scent clinging to the fabric. When we passed each other in the hallway, our shoulders brushed just slightly, but neither of us pulled away. It felt like walking a tightrope, every step unsteady, the fall inevitable. But life has a cruel way of testing fragile things. 2 weeks later, I came home to find a man waiting outside our apartment. He was older, mid-40s maybe, wearing a pressed suit and a scowl that could cut glass. "Can I help you?" I asked cautiously. His eyes narrowed. "You must be the fiancé." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" Before I could say more, the door opened. Ethan froze in the doorway, his face draining of color. "Daniel," he breathed. The man's lips curled. "So it's true. You're playing house again." Confusion clawed at me. What's going on? But Ethan's expression, haunted, angry, defeated all at once, told me enough. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just a stranger. He was part of Ethan's past. And I suddenly wasn't sure I wanted the answers. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Ethan stood rigid, arms crossed, while Daniel made himself comfortable on our couch like he owned the place. "You didn't return my calls," Daniel said smoothly. "So I thought I'd stop by. Imagine my surprise to find you. Engaged." Engaged. The word dripped with disdain, as if it were a dirty lie. I tried to speak. But Ethan cut me off sharply. "Don't." His eyes flicked to mine, silent and pleading. "Don't say anything. Don't ruin this." So I bit my tongue. Daniel leaned back, smirking. "So what's the plan, Ethan? Pretend long enough until you actually believe it yourself? Isn't that what you do best?" The words were a knife, and Ethan flinched like he'd been stabbed. That's when I realized Daniel wasn't just from Ethan's past. He was the reason Ethan kept his heart locked away. When Daniel finally left, the silence between us was unbearable. I wanted to ask. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand why Ethan had never told me about him. But Ethan spoke first. "Don't," he said again, voice low and raw. "Don't ask. Don't push. Just let it go." My throat tightened. How can I let it go when it's tearing you apart? He turned on me then, eyes blazing. "Because it's none of your business." The words cut deep, and before I could stop myself, I snapped back. "None of my business? I live here too. I've been pretending to be your fiancé, lying to everyone for you. Don't tell me I don't get a say." He recoiled like I'd slapped him. For a moment I thought he'd yell. But instead, his shoulders sagged, and his voice broke. "I didn't ask you to fall for it." The silence after that was deafening, because we both knew what he really meant. I didn't ask you to fall for me, and yet I had. The days that followed were unbearable. We moved like strangers in the same space. No more lingering touches, no more quiet glances. He shut himself away in his room, and I drowned myself in late shifts at the diner just to avoid being home. But avoidance only works for so long. One night, after closing, I stumbled home past midnight to find him sitting in the dark again, whiskey in hand. "You shouldn't drink so much," I said softly, dropping my bag. He didn't look at me. "You shouldn't care so much." My chest ached. "I can't help it." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "That's the problem." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand why he was pushing me away when I knew felt something too. Instead, I whispered, "You're scared." That made him snap. "Scared? You think that's what this is? You think you know me?" I didn't flinch. "I think you're terrified of being loved." The glass in his hand slammed onto the table. "And maybe you're too desperate to be needed." The words stung. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to look away. "Maybe you're right," I whispered, "but at least I'm not running from it." The silence that followed was heavier than any fight, and for the first time, I wondered if pretending had ruined us before we even began. The storm didn't break until Mrs. Henderson intervened. She showed up at our door one afternoon, clutching a tin of cookies and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Boys," she said gently, "I don't know what's going on, but love doesn't look like silence. It looks like laughter and tears and fighting and making up. Whatever you have, it's worth more than pride." Then she patted Ethan's arm, kissed my cheek, and left us standing there in stunned silence. We didn't speak. Not then. But her words lingered. That night, Ethan knocked on my door. "Can we talk?" My heart stuttered. "Yeah." He sat on the edge of my bed, hands clasped tightly. Daniel was my fiancé. Once. The world tilted. "I loved him," Ethan continued, voice hollow. "Or I thought I did. But he wanted control, not love. He broke me down piece by piece until I didn't know who I was anymore. And when I finally walked away, he made me believe no one else would ever stay." My chest ached with every word. "That's why I asked you to pretend," he admitted, eyes glistening. "Because I thought if we kept it fake, it couldn't hurt me." "You couldn't hurt me." Tears blurred my vision. "Ethan." He finally looked at me then, his defenses crumbling. "But you did. You got under my skin. You made me feel again. And that scares the hell out of me." I reached for his hand, trembling. "I'm not him. I'm not Daniel. I don't want to control you, I just want to love you." His breath hitched, and for the first time he didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers laced through mine, and he whispered, "God help me. I want that too." The first kiss wasn't perfect. It was messy, desperate, full of all the words we hadn't said. His lips were warm, trembling against mine, and my heart felt like it might explode. For the first time, nothing about it was pretend. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. But happy endings never come without another storm. The next day, Daniel returned. This time, he wasn't smirking. He was furious. "You think you can just replace me?" he spat, shoving past me into the apartment. "You think he's going to save you, Ethan?" He's nothing. I bristled. Get out. He sneered at me. Or what? You'll play house harder? You don't know him like I do. You'll never survive his walls. He'll destroy you like he destroys everything. Ethan's voice cut through the tension, low and steady. That's enough. Daniel turned, shocked. You're really choosing him? Ethan's eyes found mine, steady and unflinching. I already did. The room went silent. Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. You'll regret it. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. Ethan exhaled shakily, his shoulders trembling. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about pretending anymore. This was about survival, about healing, about choosing each other no matter how messy it got. That night, as we lay side by side in the dark, Ethan whispered, I'm scared. I turned to face him, brushing my fingers over his knuckles. So am I. His eyes softened. But maybe we can be scared together. I smiled through the ache in my chest. Yeah, together. And for the first time, I believed we had a chance. If you told me months ago that I'd fall asleep next to Ethan Walker with his arm draped lazily across my waist, I would have laughed in your face. But here I was, heart steady under the weight of him, the city humming faintly outside the window, and for the first time in years, I wasn't restless. I wasn't lonely. I was home. But life had one last test waiting for us. The following week, a letter arrived. It wasn't addressed to me, but Ethan's name was scrawled across the envelope in cold, precise handwriting. I didn't mean to look, I really didn't, but when I saw the sender's name, my stomach dropped. Daniel. Ethan found me holding the letter, guilt written all over my face. For a moment I thought he'd snap. Instead, he just sighed, took it from my hands, and opened it. The letter was short. Cruel. You'll never make it work. People like us don't get happy endings. Call me when you realize it. Ethan crumpled it in his fist, his jaw tight. I reached out carefully. Don't let him poison this. Not us. His eyes lifted to mine, raw and searching. But what if he's right? What if I ruin everything again? I took his face in my hands, firm and steady. Then ruin it with me. At least it'll be real. Something in him broke then, something fragile and terrified, and in its place, something stronger began to take root. The days after the letter weren't easy. Ethan wrestled with shadows I couldn't always reach, and I wrestled with my own fear of losing him. But little by little, we found a rhythm. He started leaving me notes on the fridge. Coffee's in the pot. Don't forget your jacket. I started cooking dinner for us, burning half the meals, but he ate every bite anyway. We argued, we laughed, we cried, but we didn't run. Not anymore. And slowly, the neighbors stopped whispering about our engagement like it was gossip. They started treating it like fact, like truth. Maybe it was. The turning point came at Mrs. Henderson's birthday party. The whole building was there, crowded into her little apartment with balloons and cake. She insisted Ethan and I sit beside her at the head of the table, her favorite boys. When it came time to cut the cake, she clutched my hand and whispered, "Take care of him. He needs someone who won't let go." I glanced at Ethan, who was watching me with an expression so open, so unguarded, it stole my breath. In that moment, I knew I wasn't just pretending anymore. I hadn't been for a long time, and maybe just maybe neither had he. That night, back in our apartment, Ethan pulled me onto the balcony. The city lights stretched before us, endless and alive. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. I spent so long convincing myself I didn't deserve this, that I didn't deserve you. My throat tightened. Ethan, he shook his head, cutting me off gently. But I'm done running. I don't want to keep pretending. Not with you. The world stilled. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. He opened it, not a flashy ring, nothing extravagant. Just a simple silver band, understated and honest. "It doesn't have to be now," he said, voice shaking. "Hell, it doesn't even have to be soon. But I want you to know I'm serious. About us. About building something real." Tears blurred my vision. "Ethan." I laughed through the sob building in my chest. You idiot. You already had me. You didn't need a ring. He smiled then, the kind of smile that stripped away all the shadows, leaving only light. Maybe I needed it, he whispered, and when he slid the band onto my finger, the world didn't feel so cruel anymore. We told the neighbors a week later. Not the truth, not exactly. We didn't admit the lies, the pretending, the mess that led us here. We just told them we were engaged. For real this time, Mrs. Henderson cried. The landlord clapped Ethan on the back. Even Ryan, who showed up later with his polished smile, looked grudgingly impressed. But none of that mattered, because when Ethan's hand found mine, steady and sure, I knew the only thing that mattered was us. Life didn't magically become perfect. We still fought. I still left socks everywhere, and he still lined his shoes up like soldiers. He still wrestled with doubts, and I still feared not being enough. But we faced it together. Every morning, every night, every messy, complicated day in between. And somewhere along the way, the line between pretending and reality blurred until it vanished completely. The last time Daniel tried to call, Ethan didn't even answer. He just looked at the screen, then at me and hit delete. Some things, he said softly, aren't worth reopening. And when he kissed me after, slow and certain, I knew he meant it. Months later, we stood in front of the courthouse. No flowers, no tuxedos, no fanfare. Just us, simple and real. When the clerk asked if we were ready, Ethan squeezed my hand and whispered, "Always." And for once, I believed him. Because somewhere between the lies and the laughter, the heartbreak and the healing, we'd found something neither of us expected. Not a performance. Not a pretense. But the truth. Love, messy and imperfect, and ours. So yes, maybe we started as a lie. But somewhere along the way, we became the only truth that mattered. And if you asked me now, I'd tell you the same thing I tell Ethan every night before we fall asleep in our little apartment with its beige walls and thin carpet. I'd pretend with you forever, if it meant ending up here. And he'd smile, brush his lips against mine, and whisper back, "No more pretending, just us." Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.